Good day, Sir Yupanko. This is our ebook review of the book Sapiens. A Brief History of Humankind, Sapiens, a book written by Dr. Yuval Noah Harari, who happens to be an Israeli historian and a philosopher. Now, the Sapien book talks about our kind, the humankind, the history, uh, the journey that we've been through until now, and how we became one of the most successful species among others. This book also contains some of our controversial decisions and other things that somehow describes and to tell us why we are here and what we become. Now let's go to the outlining the contents of the book. The book content is divided into 4 parts and containing 20 chapters that discusses on how humankind evolved and become somehow the superior to other species. The first part of the book is focused on cognitive revolution. This part discusses on how and where we came from and how our brain is different from other species. It also tackle how we overcome some of the problems we encounter during our evolution. Now, the next part is about agricultural revolution, where we learn and manage to plant our food and raise livestock. This part of the book also mentioned some of our so-called wrongdoings or our worst crime we did in the nature. Now, the third part is the unification of humankind. This part is where humans learned how to build civilization and society. This is also the part of the humankind where we learn and have religion. The last part of the book, the part 4, it contains the scientific revolution. It is where the humankind learn how to innovate and invent for improving our daily life. It also tackles how we manage to go to space.
The first chapter highlights the origin of humankind and other organisms that began from simple phenomena like energy and matter, atoms and molecules. The existence of other fields of science emerged during the coming of existence of organisms, such as physics, chemistry, and biology. We used to think that we are the only humans who ever lived, but there are other human species besides Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens evolved from simple to complex organisms as the human brain and physical body kept developing, and they kept inventing tools for their survival. Homo sapiens kept spreading to other parts of the world, and they encountered other human species such as Neanderthals, Denisovans, and more. The term survival of the fittest by Charles Darwin applies to how sapiens survived and other human species were extinct because Homo sapiens have a secret recipe in conquering the world, which is a unique language. Homo sapiens have superior intelligence compared to other human species, but their brain capacity is far more limited. Of course, Homo sapiens would not have survived if they were not in a group, and they were able to form groups because they establish common myths that will convince everyone to believe them. The transition of Homo sapiens from being hunter-gatherers to farmers occurred. Thus, we inherit wisdom, knowledge, behaviors, characters, experience they possessed. The water bodies created a barrier that made it difficult for humans and animals to explore other land masses and settle there. However, Their creative and innovative minds made them develop ways to travel to other parts of the world.
Chapter 5: History's Biggest Fraud. Humans gathered plants and killed animals 2.5 billion years ago, with Homo sapiens originating in East Africa and spread to the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. As they migrated to America and Australia, they began gathering and hunting fauna for survival. Political dynamics, religious beliefs, and social structures changed dramatically 10,000 years ago due to their time threatening the lives of plants and animals. Domestication of plants and animals changed agriculture, laying the groundwork for the agricultural revolution. Around 10,000 years ago, sapiens began to focus on managing the lives of a few animal and plant species, laying the groundwork for the agricultural revolution. Chapter 6: Building Pyramids. Sapiens who had a symbiotic relationship with nature experienced alienation and greed as farming became more popular. This led to the shift from hunting and gathering to farming and permanent settlements. The growing population and agriculture increased the demand for resources, making the agricultural revolution contentious. Farmers focused on the future, while foragers depleted resources. The agricultural revolution brought sapiens together, forming families and sharing agricultural produce, resulting in the emergence of imagined order. Chapter 7: Memory Overload. Professor Harari explores the storage of information in the past, highlighting the importance of empires generating vast amounts of information. As humans evolved, information was stored in memory, but when someone died, they could lose it. The Sumerians, living in southern Mesopotamia, invented writing to store and process massive amounts of data outside of memory. This allowed empires to record harvests and transactions through writing, eliminating the need for human brains to store information. Chapter 8: There is no justice in history. Professor Harari investigates how mankind organized themselves in what he calls mass cooperation networks. In this chapter, according to the chapter, humans lack the biological instincts that would allow them to sustain mass cooperation networks. However, to address this concern, the author asserts that the creation of imagined order and device scripts, which were succeeded by the invention of writing, provided information of biological inheritance. It should be noted that the imagined order resulted in the formation of some classes or group classes, where people were classified based on their wealth.
Chapter 9: The Arrow of History. Human society became more complex after the agricultural revolution. Additionally, the imagined order became more apparent as these societies grow in size. People also grew up with myths and fiction from the moment they were born. People began to behave in accordance and in certain standards and began to think in accordance like the way they're born. Likewise, the social order expected that is individual with a particular goal in mind where they regard rules and guidelines and regulation. The main thing that happened in human societies was the formation of cultures, which required people to act in a certain way and allowed strangers to collaborate. Strangers were bound together by culture and they had no choice but to work together. Now, this chapter says that the different human groups' culture each had their own legal, social, and worldview system that guide them. The political structure of each culture are also distinctive. Same on the other chapter, the law and religion. Back then, religion, uh, for example, as Islam that believes that there's an afterlife or other place called in the religion called Mecca. Now, if we will examine it, religion back then are used to unify people and collaborate with them because they share the same belief, thoughts, and culture. But now, as we can see, because that we have plenty of religion, it became one of the factor. why we're not united because of our different uh, beliefs. Somehow, those things that unified us back then is the reason why are not unified now. And on let's go back to the chapter 9. It's also mentioned that cultures differ in their norms, values, and belief. However, culture is ever evolving. Culture is dynamic. It is the sense that is able to change by removing some of its previous practices. In a nutshell, the chapter generally examines the role of culture and agrees that culture is the source of current social order. Beliefs, values, and norms were established through culture to direct behavior and organize individuals. Just like I said, culture, rules, values are the reason why we are organized. It is one of the reason why we are united and why we are like this. But unfortunately, especially now, those things are the reason why we having some friction with so-called stranger or other people, uh, and one of the main reason why we're not united.
The chapter 14 to 17 focuses on the transition to the scientific revolutions, inventions, and innovations that was made to the world towards industrialization and significant economic growth. The discovery of a homemade microscope in 1674 by Anton van Leeuwenhoek was one of the most notable things that happened in the scope of this chapter. This enables humans to discover more, especially microorganisms, since the knowledge regarding organisms and Earth is limited. Aside from studying microorganisms, humans also study the things in the atmosphere. An example to this is to find the distance that exists between the sun and Earth. Although knowledge is one of the main goals of such scientific revolutions, um, some nations like America or Europe use this in an attempt to have control over the world. According to the 16th century thinker Thomas Hobbes, man's desires knows no bounds. Man never will never be and can never be satisfied, and man is the essence of a greedy being. And since there is a technological development and research, this is what people lead to what we call capitalism. People started using energy and raw materials to produce goods and services for the market. This then leads to the world of industrialization and significant economic growth. Furthermore, this also explains why the world is now an industrialized global society.
According to chapter 18, the revolution is irreversible, and therefore the humanity must live up to it. Additionally, the chapter portrays the sapiens as the primary agent of revolution. Thus, the plants and animals are permanently under the control of sapiens. Furthermore, the natural resources are now fully utilized despite the environmental degradation, but the sapiens are more focused on mass production and resource exploitation for wealth creation. The next one is the chapter 19. According to Prof. Harari's explanation in this chapter, um, the success of humanity has brought a happiness to the human societies. Additionally, the human societies is more developed and better than pre-agricultural and industrial societies, which may explain why the Homo sapiens have been able to live happily. In the last chapter, Prof. Harari's praise the end of human species implies that the humankind has reached a new stage in its evolution. Um, Human societies have progressed to the point where science appears to control every aspect of human life. Consider robotics. Robots may appear to be replacing sapiens, and Mr. Harari may be implying that in future, even if the only humankind remaining may be replaced.
This book, Sapien, is a book that a must read. Uh, Somehow it is a controversial and very intriguing because it really shows us what we become and what are the effects that we do in our nature, our society, and how we shape the world now. In the book, it shows that we're just a simple species, an animal to be exact, but now we're the so-called gods of this world. We're the species that dominate them, but because it is only one thing, because of our specialized brain, it is utilized during the as well developed during the evolution and utilized for our special needs. This book Sapiens is not simply about evolutionary. It also talks a lot, especially in our society now. Why we are like this, why we become like this, where will we go? And like I said, it's very controversial because, for example, domesticating animals is so said in this book is one of our biggest crime that we did. Uh, Especially the domestication of animals happen when we manage to learn how to plant our own food to live on a stable place or a permanent place. Now, because of this, we because it's one of the thing that I somehow changed my mind because I thought domestication animal is a pretty good thing, but somehow we tampered the evolution of or the evolutionary process, and now until now I just realized like we are the one responsible of plenty of bad things that happening in our nature, especially in our environment. And the other thing that made me realize is the thing about the human rights, values, culture, and law. Those are all not part of any biological or environment or part of the environment. Just a concept that we made to somehow unified, control, and make everything in order. But that's so just this book is clearly amazing that from a simple species that almost an animal, now we are here uh managing this world, destroying this world, and somehow the so-called more superior species than others.
Homo sapiens evolved into food producers and environmental change agents. Humans discovered that they could control the growth and reproduction of certain plants and animals. This finding resulted in farming and animal herding, which reshaped Earth's natural landscapes, first locally, then globally. Humans were more established as they engaged more time in food production. Villages grew into towns, and towns grew into cities. With more food accessible, the human population began to skyrocket. Our species' progress has inadvertently created a watershed moment in the history of life on Earth. Modern humans evolved a distinct set of physical and behavioral features, many of which other early human species shared, albeit not to the same extent. Modern humans' advanced minds enable them to engage with one another and with their surroundings in novel and unexpected ways. Bigger brains helped our ancestors survive as the environment became more uncertain. If our ancestors didn't figure out how to survive in the natural world, humans would be extinct today.